Hello, everyone. We are back for our talk episode about A Doll's House. I am your host, Katie.
And I'm your Laura host, Laura Barnes.
And everyone else is here too. Yay!
Say hi, everybody.
Yay.
Hi!
Woo!
We want to get started with some, I'm going to say it right today, dramaturgy with
Woohoo!
Alex.
Woo!
Hi, I'm Alex, your local hobbyist dramaturg.
Woo!
And I'm here to tell you a little bit about Ibsen and about this play in particular. So Ibsen, he was a Norwegian playwright. His father married his stepfather's niece, which is super weird, which meant he legally married his first cousin, but apparently they lived more like siblings. And then they got married.
So that's what that line in this play is
Yeah.
about. We live
So
like
that-
brother and
that
sister.
already gives us some context because his parents had basically grown up as siblings and then got married. So potentially cringe. But there's another piece of context that I wanted to add, which is that Ibsen's father was a merchant who came on hard economic times, who had some economic difficulties. So a lot of people say that a lot of Ibsen's plays and the emphasis on interpersonal relationships and weird romantic relationships, as well as the emphasis on financial difficulties, comes from his own life and his own upbringing. Ibsen made a name for himself in making very critical and controversial plays. So as he kind of got more and more productions, his plays got more and more divisive. He was very critical of the moralistic society that he grew up in. A Doll's House was kind of the first one where people were like, whoa, you can't say that stuff, man. But some other examples are Ghosts, which was about syphilis, An Enemy of the People, which was about a doctor who gets ostracized for trying to spread public health awareness, and The Wild Duck, which, there's so much going on in that play, but a lot of it has to do with some scandalous family secrets. That one is a spicy one. But after A Doll's House, that was when people started to know that when an Ibsen play was going on, that would be in controversy. But let's talk about A Doll's House in particular. It was first performed in 1879 at the Royal Theatre in Copenhagen. And it was based on a true story. It was based on Ibsen's friend Laura Keeler. I think that's how you pronounce her name, but I don't know for sure.
Approved.
Yes! Okay, great. Took out a fraudulent loan for her husband, asked Ibsen to help her pay it off. Ibsen refused, or maybe he couldn't, unclear why. But eventually her husband did catch her and had her institutionalized. Oof.
Yikes.
Ibsen, big yikes. Oh, but it gets yikesier. It gets yikesier because Ibsen wrote this play and had it produced while she was still institutionalized. So she came back to the world to find out that everyone knew her story. She generally had a pretty happy ending. She actually became quite a successful writer, but she always resented the fact that the main thing that she would always be known for was being Ibsen's Nora.
Wait, Laura and Nora even sound the same.
Yeah,
She didn't even
hardly even change her name.
To change the name.
Yeah, he didn't even try. So as you may expect for a play like this, performed in 1879, it was very scandalous because it questions women's role in society, especially the part at the end where Nora leaves her husband and children. So Ibsen, he preempted this. He knew that some people were going to be real butthurt about A Doll's House. So he wrote an alternative ending where she doesn't leave her kids. This bit I didn't look up, but I remember learning in high school that the alternative ending is where she just breaks down and cries in the doorway.
I heard that she goes in and like faints.
Oof.
After that.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that an alternative version was also often performed because it was just too freaking scandalous that she would leave her kids. But that is the true ending. And I want to end the dramaturgy bit on my favorite Ibsen fun fact, which is Ibsen had one of the best last words of all time, which was that when he was dying, his nurse was assuring some visitors that he was getting better And he said, on the contrary, and then he died. I just think that is proof that the man was a genius.
Love that. And for the record about the alternate ending, he wrote that ending because he didn't want other people to rewrite it, but he hated that ending's guts. He was like, this is stupid and I hate it.
That is a good thing to point out. That he was like, I know that other people are going to want to do this, so I might as well just give it to them so that, you know, they don't change my words, but yeah. It's not the real ending.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Alex, for your dramaturgy segment. As
You
always,
got it.
very enlightening. Now we're moving into the What We Cut segment, hosted by me, Laura. What we cut in this play, I didn't really want to cut, but I have this rule that I don't want our plays to go over 2 hours. So I'm following the 2-hour rule, and I might still have to cut more because we still went over 2 hours when we recorded just now. So what we cut is good stuff. Like, it's good stuff, and I felt like a lot of it was narratively important and, like, added stuff to the text. There's a bit about macarons.
Except for the one racist line.
Except for the one line that is weird about race.
Yeah.
Which is we cut that section anyway because it was sort of a superfluous section anyway.
But we would have cut the anti-Chinese part anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that section, but we would have cut that part anyway. So there's like this whole thing where Nora likes macaroons and Helmer like doesn't want her to eat them, has forbidden them in the house, so she's kind of like sneaking them in and being like, oh, Mrs. Lynn brought them. Cut all that stuff. Again, I think it's good stuff, but I was just cutting for time. Nora last year made Christmas ornaments that the cat ate, so that tells you a little bit about her. I cut a little bit from the first scene with Krogstad and Nora. I didn't say what, so hopefully it wasn't that important. I cut some beautiful lines from the children where they all in unison ask what happened to the strange man who was there, Krogstad, which we had a lot of fun doing when we read through it, and then I was like, wait, we need to cut more. So we cut that, and some of Nora decorating the Christmas tree right around there too. There's a section where Nora and Mrs. Lind talk about Dr. Rank, and Nora is... Oh, and Mrs. Lind is saying, like, thinking that he's the one who gave her the loan, and being like, that's crazy. And Nora's like, oh, no, it wasn't
sus.
him. Yeah, exactly, that's sus. And then, so that, like, kind of... And they also talk about, like, textually, the disease that Dr. Rink is sick with is something that he inherited, like he got from his father who had an STD, and then passed like that disease on to his kid, and that's why he's sick and why he's dying. We cut kind of establishing that with Nora and Mrs. Lind. Again, it's good stuff, but I was just trying to cut for time. We cut some of Nora and Helmer talking about Krogstad, including a section that Alex really likes. Alex, would you like to detail that section, what it involves?
There's a part where Torvald is like, Nora, but there's a secret other reason that I can't work with Krogstad. And Nora's like, what is it? And he's like, we went to school together, and he's just like a little too bro-y with me, and it's like really annoying. It's so embarrassing. I can't have him doing that. He's always like, hey, Torvald, what's up? And I'm like, oh, you're so cringe. That's the exact quote, by the way. Ibsen said that word for word. But it's just so funny because it's just another we're too many instances of Torvald just being the worst person ever, and that's just another one of them.
We cut a lot of Torvald being awful. Another thing that we cut of Torvald being awful is there's Mrs. Lind has brought her knitting, and Torvald is like, you should knit, you should embroider instead, like
it's sexier.
And he literally like mansplains embroidery to her. He's like, you put the needle in here and then you do this with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
And he's like teaching me how to do it. I was like, what?
That's also the bit that has the weird section about like weird race comment that we would have cut anyway. When Torvald comes home from the party, he is like really feeling his wife and like really wants to be with her. We cut that.
He's talking about champagne the whole time. Like, that was really excellent champagne they gave us. Yeah, well, you're completely drunk.
My favorite part about that is that he's all like, Nora, when you were dancing, you were so hot. We gotta have sex right now. And then they find out that Dr. Rank is gonna die, and he's like, damn, that sucks. Anyway, back to us having sex.
Yeah.
Rank has a really nice section that we cut when he comes in that last time, his last scene before, like, what he feels is his goodbye with them. And he has a section where he's like, what are we gonna be for the next ball? Like, what are we gonna do then? And Rank is like, I'm gonna be invisible. I'm gonna be an invisible person. I'm gonna get a hat that'll make me invisible. Which is really good narratively, right? Because what he's saying is like, I'm gonna be dead, y'all.
Great costume.
As a character, he has such a great humor. It's so, I don't know, this dark humor. I have to say, one of my favorite things from him that he says is when Nora is telling him, you know, you want to leave, right? She's trying like, no, you don't want to die. And Rank says, certainly, however wretched I may feel, I want to prolong the agony as long as possible. All my patients are like that. And he's like that the whole time. I love it.
I love a sad boy.
And so that's the last thing that I have cut so far, but I'm gonna tell you, we still went over. So I might cut some stuff probably from the last scene because it's really long, but also
It's also a little repetitive.
it's long, it can get repetitive. It also is really important, you know, because it's Nora's moment. So we'll
true.
see how that goes. I hope I don't have to cut a ton from that, but some of that might be missing when you hear it. So that is the stuff that we cut.
We'll move on to favorite quotes, best quotes, worst quotes, any of that. I have to say that one of my personal favorites, it's not the most important quote in the thing, but it's when Nora is talking about Torvald and she says, like, Torvald can't bear to see any dressmaking happening.
Yeah.
Along the same lines as a Torvald line where he goes, I literally feel physically ill when I am the company of such people. Which just really got me.
This is not a funny line. This is a serious line. But of all of the thank you. Of all of the, as soon as we were doing favorite lines, I was like, oh man, all the funny moments, just I don't remember them anymore. Of all, like, I feel like of all of Nora's last section, it's all the hard hitting stuff. You're like, yes, do it, say it. But I feel like the best like line where I'm like, oh, if the play was just 2 lines, it would be these lines. And it's when Torvald says, a man would never sacrifice his honor for someone he loves, and Nora's like, women have to do that every day.
Yeah.
Like, that is what is expected of women.
The line that I thought you were gonna say is, he asked her like, what higher duties could you have than to your husband and children?
Also that.
And she says, to myself.
Yeah.
But I think Alex is right. If it was a 2-line play, that would be the 2 lines. So that's what you can cut around, Laura.
Yeah.
So when we release this 2-line play, you'll know why we cut all the rest.
But especially since the whole time he's like, I'm gonna take care of you, I'm gonna protect you. I often fantasize that like that you were in danger and I could save you. The whole time he's saying like, you're my little, helpless whatever. And then in the one moment that she needs his help, he's like, I can't do this.
Yeah. I also really like everything she says about the like wonderful thing that's about to happen, the terrible wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't happen, and she takes some very drastic action about it.
Any other favorite quotes, best and worst quotes?
I really like the maybe this is silly, but the interaction that Nora and Christine have, and especially at the beginning, how defined are their characters when they have the encounter, and Christine is seen so mature, and Nora is just talking about her happiness, and she tries to say, no, but Christine, tell me about you, and no, but wait, have you heard about my husband? And she's just trying the whole time to she's showing herself also as such a child, or so, like thinking a lot about herself and trying to show it to everyone. And Christine is so patient and so I don't know, so different, and even so they have a good relation, and I really like how defined and how good are made the dialogues to talk to each other, and yes, I don't know. And also when they're saying, when Nora is asking about, at last is asking Christine about her, about why she married her late husband, and she says, and he didn't leave you anything, and she's like, no, no children, not anything, not at all. And Christine says, not even a feeling of loss or sorrow. It's, I just love it very much.
I'm also really fond of the fact that, like, every single time in especially the first two acts, Nora talks to Torvald, she uses his name, and he uses her name almost never. He usually calls her a bird or something like that.
Or squirrel.
Skylark
Yeah,
or
Skylark.
squirrel or
Yep.
Except at the end when he is begging her to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Yeah.
then he's all Nora, Nora, Nora.
I think that was very well thought out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that you said, Boost, reminded me of another really good moment. The fact that, like, everyone is calling Nora a child this whole time, but also she acts in a very immature way. I really like the
Yes.
moment at the end where Torvald says, like, you don't know anything about the world. And she's like, yeah, that's the point. I don't. I gotta go find out. Like, I'm aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, something that we like to ask about this play and all of our plays is, does it hold up? Should we be doing this play, and any thoughts on how it should be executed?
I'll talk a little about, if that's okay, about my experience with this play, because this was one that I was lobbying hard for us to do, and I was like, I'm gonna put in my marker. I want to play Nora. I don't want to take leads very often, because I want everyone to have an excellent experience on this podcast and get different people in major parts. But this one I wanted. I read this play about a year ago. I listened to the LA Theater Works audiobook of it with Callista Flockhart. And for the first, like, 2/3, I was like, I hate this. This is the dumbest central conflict I've ever heard. Like, I understand that, like, I understand that things were different then, and, you know, this was a bigger deal, but even still, I think this is kind of stupid. And then and the only thing I knew about this play was the very last thing. I knew that the play ended with her leaving the house and closing the door. That is what I knew. And then I was kind of like, I don't really know how we're leading up to this. This seems ridiculous. And then the last scene happened, and I was like, well, there we go. This is one of my favorite plays now. So, and now going through, I enjoy the first two acts a lot more, because I see where it's leading. But I think this is a play that definitely benefits from multiple reads, listens, whatever, watching. Yeah.
Right, he sets it up really excellently.
Yeah.
And that's when I was looking for stuff to cut. I was like, this is all really good. Like, who was Ibsen's editor? Because that person did a good job.
But I think this play holds up extremely well. It gets a lot of play. Yeah, and I think it's worth
And
it.
something that is not true of all of our plays, good roles for women.
Yes.
Sure, we
Yeah.
also have the maid and the nurse, but
and
you know,
whatever the baby's name is.
Even the nurse has, like, a moment. Like,
The
that's
nurse
the
does
thing.
have a
Even
moment.
like, I feel like when you have, like, maid characters and nurse characters, usually it's all just like, here I am doing this service thing. But we
Mhm.
even get some character for, and some discussion of the role of women in this society with the nurse, and learning about her, the
Yeah.
child she had to give up.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so let's do a little show of hands, and then I'll tell everybody how many hands went up. You can't see us. Show of hands, who thinks we should still be doing this play? Interesting. Oh, we've got 2 hands from Bayes. So we have actually 6 hands from the 5 of us.
And I cannot put up my feet, but
6, maybe 8, depending on if we see Bayes' feet make an appearance here.
I was gonna say, aside from the fact that, this discussion of the role of women in society over 100 years later, unfortunately is still an ongoing thing. Like, we still have to be like, hey, women should maybe have rights. Think about it. So like, not only is it thematically relevant that I think there are people in this day and age who would still be scandalized by a play from 1879,
Mm-hmm.
but aside from that, like you said, Laura, it's like very masterfully laid out. It is so like, just as a dramatic work, the way that everything unravels in a way that feels inevitable, but also the fact that it is set up. There is this interesting subversion of expectation because it is set up for us to think that the drama of the play is all going to be about the loan and the money, and that it's all going to be this financial crisis. But actually, the financial crisis is just a vehicle for the actual conflict, which is
Right.
Nora's realization that she is in a bad marriage, which is so cool.
And it's really interesting because a lot of people have talked about the end of this play, and it is very complicated, which I think is the point, and I think that's good about it. That, like, yes, leaving your bad husband is generally a good idea. Leaving your children is a much more complicated idea. And I think I appreciate that it is a messy ending in some ways. Not, I mean, it's very tightly plotted and tightly written and all that stuff, but just like, this is a messy choice she is making. And that's fascinating to me.
Right, and every day in our lives, women are faced with that choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And stuck in bad situations because they don't want to leave their children.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I really like about the ending and the messiness of it is, and this is why I love Torvald as a character and wanted to play Torvald. Obviously, he's terrible. He's such an the whole play. He's the worst husband.
Right, she keeps saying, like, you're so kind to me all these
Yeah.
years, and it's like, I don't know about that, but okay.
Is that he has no idea what he is doing wrong.
Mm-mm.
He truly thinks that he is such a good husband. So the ending is so interesting because he just doesn't get it. He's like, he's trying really hard. It's just he is trying in all the wrong ways and being a terrible person while doing it. But it's easy to feel at least like a little bit bad for him because he's so stupid.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's so smart.
And it comes out of nowhere for him.
Yeah, exactly.
And
there was no build up for him.
That's difficult for
Yeah.
someone. It almost comes out of nowhere for her too, though.
Yeah.
Honestly. But at least she understands where she's coming from in a better place. The messiness of the ending is also, I think, why there have been some sequels that have been written. The two most notable ones being A Doll's House Part 2, which was a play done a couple years ago on Broadway with Laurie Metcalf, that took place like 15 years later. And the other was a musical from 1973, I think, that lasted 5 performances. And it's called A Doll's Life. And it's not even on the Wikipedia page for A Doll's House, is how little known this is. But I listened to the musical after I read the play, and I found that it has my favorite overture of all time, because it's so evocative and it's about work and working through things. And it's I don't know that everybody's gonna change their mind to be like, it's gonna be Doll's Life for me for best overture, but that's where I'm at. And both of those pieces, I believe, have a very like feminist, like she gets involved in like, 19th century feminism in an interesting way, which I think is an interesting choice because I don't think that's necessarily the only way that this can go. And it's very interesting also to me, this is just a very small diversion, that when A Doll's Life came out and was universally panned, pretty much, it only ran 5 performances, people said, this is a dumb premise, I don't know why anybody's thinking about what Nora would be doing. And then when A Doll's House Part 2 came out a couple years ago, people were like, everybody's been wondering for hundreds of years what Nora did after that. And that was just an interesting, like, I don't know why critics said, I mean, it wasn't the same critics necessarily, but like, it was just an interesting thing I noticed.
So that gets us into talk about, do we think that this is a good play to try and adapt? What would modern adaptations look like? And Bayus, I know that you have some like works that you'd like to recommend, maybe versions you'd like to recommend, if you want to start us off with that.
Yes. Well, first I have to say that I am super happy to have been able to participate in this interpretation of Ibsen, because I have to admit that this work makes me a little bit sentimental
Mhm.
because it is the first non-Spanish theater play that I read when I
Oh.
was very young.
Oh.
And when I was in school, I used to read a lot of theater, Spanish theater, because we have a lot in Spain. And I had also the weird hobby of reading theater since I was a child. I don't know why, but yes. And in high school, it was mandatory. Suddenly, I had a subject that it was. How was it called? International literature or something like that. And it was mandatory at some point to read this work, to discuss it, to discuss something about it and about feminism and all of that. And I remember I bought it, I read it, I liked it, although I remember that the style was a little bit strange for me, and how the subject was mm, explained, and how Ibsen dealt with it. But I will always remember this work. I will never forget it. And many years have passed since then, and since I read it for the last time. And as soon as Laura said that they needed one more actor, I canceled all my plans and I jumped headfirst. It was like, I need to do this. And I've only had a couple of days to prepare for the role and to prepare everything. So unfortunately, I've only had time to see and to hear like 3 or 4 of the film and podcast versions, of which I want to highlight from the films, from the movies. The one by the Argentine director Ernesto Arancibia. And actually, as Alex said, there are 2 different endings for Ibsen that he wrote. And in the film that I mentioned, this one, curiously, Arancibia uses the alternative ending,
Mm.
in which Nora returns home after, I think, 2 years, and she just returned for Christmas, and they all look happy with no problem at all. They don't discuss anything. She just arrives and everything is fine.
Welcome back, Mom.
Yes.
Oh, did you take a
And
wrong turn somewhere?
but I like it because it's very all the film is very similar to the theater play. They didn't change a lot, and she just at the end says, "Well, I need to find myself," and she just departs, and then she comes back. And anyway, as for the audio versions, I haven't found a lot. If someone wants to listen like to just a whole reading, Lisa Van Dam with in the podcast Read With Me is not bad, although it becomes a little bit monotonous because she reads all the characters. She reads absolutely everything. But between the acts, she makes comments because she's a literature teacher, and she makes comments on about the work and the life of Ibsen, which are, well, quite interesting. And yeah, I think that's it. Well, actually, seeing all these versions, it's funny to see also about my character. That is the one that I did, Christine. It is curious how, depending on the version, the interpretation that they do of Christine Lind and the character, how the character is changed. Some they make her very serious and burned and is very strict, and others they do her like more melancholic and candid. I like more that version, like more mature and candid, and with all the experience of life. And yes, I like that one. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Do we think it would hold up to a modern adaptation? I mean, we were talking about how the themes are still kind of relevant.
My hot take is that if you're going to do uh an adaptation of the text as it is, like a translation, but keep it more or less as it is, like, go for it. I think it's still relevant. You should not change the time period. I think it is written for at a particular time in history, and a lot of people say, "Oh, it's an old play; it's public domain." It's in the 1950s now. I don't think you should do that with this one. I think it is very specific to the time that it was written in, and you should not do that.
I mean, the conflict would have to be different if it were modernized.
Yeah. If you were to change the text, like, I think that this story could exist in any variety of settings.
Mhm.
So like if you want to rewrite it, go for it. Lots of people have. That's also cool. I think both are acceptable. I just think if you're going to say no, we're putting on A Doll's House, keep it where it exists in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really ripe for rewriting. Right, because and like people seem to have picked up on that. But you know, I say like rewrite it and put it anywhere, anytime, put it in space, like I don't know. Put it in space and have her go out in her space
Nora in
suit at the
space.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, the click at the end is the click of her helmet coming on.
Yeah.
Okay, you say this jokingly. This is kind of sick though.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I kind of
We always
actually
come up with
love
super
this.
sick modern adaptations in this section of the talk episode.
Might go and write Space Doll's House.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it Space House.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a narratively good story, and like I don't know quite like if you wanted to put it in modern day. Like, I guess you could have someone who has like a lot of credit card debt, maybe. You could, like, but
Well, I feel like the big thing is that no one really travels to Italy for their health anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
well, no, but like it could be hospital bills.
Yeah, it
just
could be, like,
hospital
medical
That's
bills.
true.
Like
That's true.
you could
Could be
have
hospital bills.
Torvald had cancer, and is
That's true.
like is surviving in remission.
Right. But then where did she learn the tarantella? In the hospital? I don't think so.
In her semester abroad.
In one of the versions, the Spanish versions that I found that they did in television, because it's very interesting that there are many versions in Spanish, and it was very, I think it was like 20 years after the work came out. It started. They did a translation to Spanish, to Catalan, I think also, and to Spanish, and they started doing their interpretations in Spanish. Anyway, it's very funny that the version that they did for television, they changed some things. Actually, I didn't finish watching it because I didn't like it a lot. They changed a lot of things, and one of the things that they say is that the husband, o sea, Torvald, he had some weird and exotic fevers, and they had to travel to United States to go to doctors and to a spa or something like that, and it was so weird. Like, I'm not going to watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are two modern pieces of media that I would not call adaptations or anything, but have similar themes in many ways. We talked about one last night, which is the final scene between Torvald and Nora is actually very similar to, or this scene is similar to it, the last scene between Joe and Hannah in Angels in America, A Gay Fantasia on National Themes Part 2, Perestroika. She is just, she's leaving, and it's less, there's a lot of different things going on in that scene, but she's leaving and she says, don't follow me. I'm gonna take your credit card, I'm gonna buy a plane ticket, and then I'm gonna cut it up, and you'll never see me again. And I find that very interesting. And the other one is Runaway Bride, starring Richard Gere and Julia Roberts.
Nice.
And in that movie, she has a very strong identity crisis. The biggest metaphor for that is that Richard Gere is a investigative reporter trying to find out more information about her. I'm not going to go through the plot of Runaway Bride, but anyway, he asks
No,
all
do.
of her
Let's do it.
he asks all of her former fiancés what kind of eggs she likes. He says, "What kind of eggs does Maggie like best?" And they all say, "Oh, same as me." And there's a scene at the end of the movie where she makes like 8 different kinds of eggs and tries them all, and then she goes to Richard Gere and she's like, "Benedict. Eggs Benedict is my favorite kind of eggs. It's not what I told all those men to make them happy. Eggs Benedict is my favorite kind of eggs." And that is that is a metaphor for her whole kind of arc, which is just about, she doesn't really know who she is. She's just kind of been swallowed by the men in her life, and it's about her not wanting to do that anymore. Runaway Bride is not as good as A Doll's House, believe it or not.
Are you sure?
I'm gonna watch it. I actually have never watched Runaway
she
Bride,
she
so
is
I will
exceptionally cute in that movie. That is the cutest
Yeah.
that Julia Roberts ever is. And she's a pretty
do.
cute,
Saying a lot,
pretty
'cause
cute
she's-
lady.
Yeah.
But she's just very enchanting in that movie. It's an okay movie. It's got a great cover though. But that's my pinned tweet is about how, and it's been there for like a year, that Runaway Bride is a lot like A Doll's House. So that's what I think a modern adaptation would look like.
Runaway Bride.
It would look like 1999's Runaway Bride.
Does anybody have anything else to say about adaptations or A Doll's House in general before we give people a chance to promote the cool stuff that they've got going on?
The other thing that I wanted to throw out there that was, again, a thing that we talked about yesterday that I was like, oh, I want to make sure to say this in the talk episode. It occurred to me only when we were reading this yesterday that it is so similar to Medea. So the other way around, going backwards in time instead of forwards in time. And I was like, I bet someone must have written on this. So I Googled last night. I was like, Medea and A Doll's House. And lo and behold, so many people have written about the connections between them. But the spark notes of it is that they are two tragedies in which the crux of the tragedy is marriage, and a woman who, for whatever reason, had to marry someone that she maybe didn't necessarily realize was not a good partner for her, and then ends up being blamed for the choices that she makes in order to escape that marriage.
Yeah.
And different treatment of the kids. I will say that. Say what you will about Nora. She didn't go Medea on them. So I'd say that's, the biggest difference. Also, like a chariot didn't come out of the sky and take Nora away. So there's like that too.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can combine these three pieces of media.
Yes.
In the
And
space version.
Runaway
And
Medea's
as
house.
Nora flies away in her chariot, she shouts, "Benedict! It's Eggs Benedict!"
Excellent. Well, I'm going to give everybody a chance to promote the stuff that they have going on if they would like to do so. I'm going to start with Drew. Do you have anything? That sounds so awful to say it like that.
You have anything for us?
Anything?
Is your life in existence?
Drew, is there anything you'd like to share with us? That's
with the class.
I don't know. Oh, maybe this is worth. I don't know. I know.
Try.
I know everyone here has like really cool original podcasts and like fun things that they have going on. But if you'd rather support big corporate streaming platforms, the show I worked on all this year now has a release date. The sequel series to that 70s show, that 90s show, is premiering January 19th. So if you want to make sure I have a job next year, go ahead and watch it.
Look at you.
Congratulations, Drew.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It was fun.
Excellent. Alex, you always have a bunch of stuff to promote. I know you're working on a fun new podcast.
Yes. Many things, and I'll try to keep it short. I work with a company called Strong Branch Productions, and we do podcasts and tabletop games, all that fun stuff. Our biggest show is a scripted science fiction comedy called The Stench of Adventure. I'm currently working on writing season 3 of that. That was the perfect time to go catch up on seasons 1 and 2 so that you can be ready for the thrilling 3rd season. In addition to that, we have an anthology style show called Tales from the Radiator coming out. It's a different actor and a different writer for every episode. So if you want to go support some really fantastic writers and actors, Bayus is in it and did an amazing job with her story. So that premieres January 2nd, the start of next year. And I'm also directing a super cool show called Among the Stacks, which you can listen to some teaser trailers for that now. That is a really cool fantasy show about. You can't see me shrugging on a podcast. A really cool show about listen and find out. And then apart from all that, you can find me on social media. I'm at GalaxyQuest most places. That's like Galaxy Quest, the 1998 cult classic film, but with my name in it. You can find me as galaxyquest.podvibes.co on Mastodon. And galaxyquest.itch.io is where I sell all my tabletop games. I think that's it.
Excellent.
Very
Beus, do you have anything you would like to share with the class?
Well, I want to promote the podcast called Tales from the Radiator. Some Alex or so they are doing something called like that, so that's gonna be fun. Anyway, well, I don't have a lot to promote, but if I may, there's there's a very good podcast that I really like. That is called Apollyon, and they are funding right now. They're trying to fund the second season, so I recommend it a lot because the first season was fantastic, and I recommend this also because they released this summer and is almost at the end. It's only one episode, I think, is coming out, the last episode next week or in a couple of weeks, a mini series related to the podcast where I appear. I am there, and it's really good.
nice.
The episodes are very short. It's called Patient Zero, and it's related to Apollyon. And I recommend Apollyon a lot. If you can donate a little bit, it's gonna be very, very appreciated. And that's it. And apart from that, just pass by my Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I am Madame Beus, and you will be very welcome.
Woo.
Sweet.
I forgot one thing.
Yes, Alex has one more thing.
Can I add it? One more thing. I always have like short stories happening here and there. And I recently had my short story, The Strange Garden, produced by Weird Tales Podcast. So if you want to hear my short fiction, you can check that out. Okay, that's my last thing.
Okay, excellent. Has anything besides our podcast?
I've got a link tree that you can find where it has my Twitter, my letterboxd is on there, I guess. All kinds of things on there. It's linked linktr.ee/the has Katie THEHAZCADY. And I just want to tell everybody to remember to take care of yourself this season. It is cold, and that is hard for a lot of people. And take care of yourself and don't donate to the Salvation Army.
Yeah, let's not. If you don't know why not to donate to the Salvation Army, talk to us about it, and we'll tell you. So, in terms of stuff that I want to promote, it is always our podcast. Let's see, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. You can find us
Yes.
at Public Domain Plays there. On Twitter, you can find us at PD Plays Pod, and you can always, please, please, please send us an email at publicdomainplays@gmail.com.
Yes. You can also follow us on Discord. I don't remember how to get into that Discord. I don't know how you get there, but if you email us or anything, we will figure it out. Yes. Or you can tweet at us or anything, although like will Twitter even exist when this comes out?
We'll find out.
Find out together.
Okay, one of these days we will find out a way to send off this podcast, but it's not going to be today. So for now, we're just going to say bye, y'all, and thanks.
Bye.
Bye.